Peter, as we get started, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do now?
I'm Peter Wiggins. I do quite a lot.
Very good.
Not enough time in the day, not enough days in the year. I've got 3 different types of things that I do, apart from being a father to 3 girls, which takes even more time. First of all, I'm an editor. I've been a broadcast editor for 30 years now. Started off 3/4 inch UMassic, 1 inch, missed 2 inch, thankfully. Then went right the way through, early Avid, picked up Final Cut Pro 3 really when the Blackmagic card came out. They did 10-bit.
Yep.
When it was a Kona 1. When I sold it to a guy on it in Romania on eBay for £70. Really right up to date now, where the majority of my work is now on Final Cut Pro 10. I still do Final Cut Pro 7, which is tricky after Final Cut Pro 10.
It's hard to go back.
Yeah, but you have to because people are paying you. And but I finished a really hard Final Cut Pro 10 job in January. We're kicking out a 3 or 4 minute piece every hour and a half, multi-camera interview, and went back to a Final Cut Pro 7 job literally the day after.
Right.
And I looked at the keyboard and I could not work out where the overwrite button was. It was, and you go, I've used this thing for over 10 years in broadcast,
right,
and I can't work out how to do an edit. And then it's kind of like, why isn't this editing? Go, because you need to put an in point in.
Yeah.
Because obviously with a skimmer in 10, you could just,
Oh, I see.
if you connect a clip where the skimmer is, you don't need to put an in point in. So I had to put, in points and stuff like that. So, so that's really the editing part of my life. Then I also write and sell plugins under iIndustrial Revolution. Been doing that since 2006. I think I'm the oldest is the wrong word. I'm the longest developer with FX Factory now.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
So that's going pretty well. And also I run the website fcp.co about Final Cut Pro 10.
Which is my favourite Final Cut Pro 10 website.
Well, thank you very much. And that takes up 30 hours a day.
That's a really interesting range of things, because you're an editor, so you're actually working on the coalface, but you're also a developer, so that sort of interacts a little bit with my side of things, although you're, people often refer to me as a plugin developer, but it's not true, because I see a plugin as quite specifically that very kind of,
Oh, you're an app developer, really.
App developer, yeah. Which means that I get to sell my stuff through the Mac App Store. Yay! So we've got that in common, and then I guess in you are a journalist. You really are. Somebody
wouldn't.
writes a website.
Yes, but I would never say I'm a journalist.
Okay.
I've worked with loads of journalists. I was the first freelance editor to walk through the doors of ITN when they accepted freelance editors, and with another guy called Colin Dean.
Right.
Back in I'll tell you when it was. It was around when Lockerbie happened. So 1989, somewhere around
It's
there.
up on my phone, but that sounds about right.
Somewhere around there. It was around that time, and that was editing on high band.
Yes.
And 1 inch VPR2 machines. You had 3/4 of an hour to line up your suite. So you had to literally take all the bits off, clean the heads, line everything up. How things have changed.
Yes.
Line up, what's that? So I don't think I'm a journalist. I just think I'm enthusiastic about it. And also, because I am actually at the coalface, I get back from here and I'm straight on the Tour de France for 3 weeks as senior editor on that. I am at the coalface, and nobody can accuse me of not actually using the stuff.
That's right.
Which in this industry, there are a lot of people with very strong opinions who don't actually use the stuff.
Yeah, well,
I guess the reason why I used the word journalist was because I was sort of thinking, well, fcp.co is my favourite Final Cut 10 website. Why is that? And I thought, well, it's probably because you're not just sort of republishing press releases and doing that kind of news factory kind of thing, and you're really doing stories and you're really writing stories. And so, I mean, okay, you may feel uncomfortable with the term, but you know, if it looks like a journalist and quacks like a journalist, then maybe it's a journalist.
There is a bit of republishing press releases, but I think you just don't do the big cut and paste.
Exactly.
You can be selective on a press release. If somebody gives you a bullet point of good features, then you're just going to almost cut and paste it because they've done the hard work for you. That's the idea of a press release. Try and make it as easy as possible for somebody to publish a story about you. However, there are a lot of sites out there that I call it journalism.
Exactly.
And what they do is that they just reproduce stuff, put a paragraph from somebody else, and then put a link in, saying, oh, you know, and then have a huge headline with an exclamation mark at the end, and you go to it, and then obviously it's just a paragraph and a link to somebody else's website. There's a lot of that going on.
I hate that.
But luckily, Google's actually cracking down on that now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
they're trying to crack. Well, you say you hate it. That's what they're trying to do, is improve the quality of their searches, so they'll give the actual original content a higher rating.
Interesting.
But there's a lot of journalism going on, especially in our business, because a story comes out and people are just very lazy, just copy and paste, do something. I mean, I see my stuff appear all over the place in other people's websites. So, but that's part, you know, part of the course, really.
I think you're lucky if they give you a link back.
Then some people actually just say, this is a great story, go here. So I think that there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
It's just the day-to-day copy that paragraph.
Yeah.
But I had to put all my images on the website are watermarked.
Yeah, I noticed that, yeah.
So, because people were taking, appearing here and there. But again, I think it's part of the course, and if you are successful, then people will try and duplicate what you're doing or copy it or whatever. And I mean, I think that's fine. I've seen some other websites come and go. They come out with a big, we're going to do this, and they last a year, and they go. I mean, FCP.co has been going now for, I think it started this December before Final Cut Pro 10 came out.
Oh, okay.
So 4.5 years.
So it was a Final Cut legacy-oriented website.
Oh, sorry, classic.
Yes. Where's the overwrite button? Yes.
That makes perfect sense.
So how did you get your start in a career?
I always knew what I was going to do at school.
Really? Wow.
And bear in mind, when I started in television, it was heavily unionised in the UK. You couldn't just walk into a TV station and work. It was really, really heavily unionised.
Right.
I had my first broadcast commercial on air when I was 18. But I'd made the whole thing, and then you have to employ a director to come in for 5 minutes to look at what you've done, and then they signed it, signed the form, and then they get paid 300 quid.
Oh, nice.
So they were just there to sign off on your quality as
Yeah.
being broadcast quality,
Yeah.
whatever that means.
Yes. Yeah. And it just really went from there. I just started doing other stuff, and then kind of more or less gravitated into the sports market because it's regular work. I do quite a few jobs that happen every year, Tour de France being one of them. It's actually my 20th Tour de France this year. So I don't know how good your cycling knowledge is, but in really poor, okay. In 1996, Bjarne Riis won the first one that I did. And then we had the 1998, I think it was the big drug scandal, when the race nearly stopped halfway and all the police were involved and everything like that. But that was 20 years ago. So, and that's changed. I started off producing that on tape. There's in a tape suite in Channel 4 with D5 machines. I think Channel 4 had D5, digital D5 machines. And then we went through different, along came a box called a Profile,
Right.
which was Tektronix Profile, which was the first video server. And you could control that with an edit controller, just use it as a source. So, but you could record into it and get the playback straight back out, 5 or 10 seconds later. So that's kind of the first use of an open, open file, for want of a better phrase. Because with tape, obviously you have to stop, and with tape, if you're covering a long event, you've got to do overlaps. And the profile changed the way a lot of things were covered, because you had this open. You just wanted to record. If you're covering a football match, you could start editing the top of the football match as soon as the top of the football match had started, which was revolutionary.
Right, so that's another example. We had one yesterday, an example where a change in the technology changes the way production can happen, or changes the type of production, or the way that it's performed, sort of thing. What was our example from yesterday, Philip? I don't remember. We're talking about, oh, I know, we were talking about the laptop computers getting onto set.
Yeah. So you've seen a lot of that technology change over your career so far?
Yeah.
A lot. If you think about when I first started editing, say a 3-machine tape suite, really the most impressive thing about it was you had to have a machine room with air conditioning, and just to keep all the equipment cool. And now you walk around with stuff in your laptop, your laptop in your bag, or with a Thunderbolt drive, will quite happily do a 6-camera 1080 multicam switch. That was quite amazing, really.
That's
really cool.
6 streams, I think, or 9 of a 4K multicam playing out on the laptop. I'm not sure what they were using for storage, but they may have cheated and had it on the internal drive.
And also the cost. The cost really now of equipment isn't a limiting factor.
Right.
So, I work for one client who says, well, instead of having 2 tape suites, looking back, I've got 4 NLE suites.
Right.
So you end up with a better product, more packages, more polish, more. So I mean, it's great. I mean, I'm not really. I think quite a few people find it a bit scary, but I'm the completely other way. I love new technology. I like to use it, try it, find out what works, what doesn't work, and I think that's what happened when we decided to migrate on the tour to Final Cut Pro 7. What happened was a product came out that allowed you to access an open QuickTime. So you could record a QuickTime movie as a reference file, bring that into Final Cut Pro 7, and then in the background it would fill in
Be sort of spooling.
fill in the blank where it was going to record. So you said, okay, make the reference file 3 hours.
Right.
You could bring that in, but there wasn't 3 hours of material.
Right.
So that was using Final Cut Pro 7. And that again was revolutionary, because nobody up till then had had access to an open file in an NLE.
Yeah.
You had to chunk. So you always had to stop and then start again and chunk. And that changed the industry, or the sports industry, being able to access an open file in an NLE.
I suspect that would have been a feature that had to be added to QuickTime, Philip, where remember QuickTime used to be backloaded?
Somebody did a real nice kludge.
Oh, did they? Well, kudos to them, that's great.
I didn't think anything in QuickTime changed, other than fast start. In fact,
Yeah, maybe.
The metadata header at the start of the file, which is what fast start does, rather than the end of the file. Classically, a QuickTime file had to load completely before it got the metadata about how long it was, how many tracks it had, and what type of tracks they were. Fast start moved all that to the front of the file. I would imagine that it would not have worked if we still had to wait to the end of the file to get the information about how long the file was.
Somehow I don't think so, no. Wow, so you were doing that with Final Cut 7 and this sort of kludge in QuickTime. So,
But it worked.
It worked, okay. So before that you were having to have the whole race recorded and then...
Well, we didn't do it on 7 until you actually had that facility to be able to bring a QuickTime in. And then a couple of other companies followed, and EBS, who are a big server company, sports server, slow-mos and everything, actually wrote an export or a stream out of their machines. So rather than having a separate Mac sitting there recording, you could actually stream out of an EBS. And a lot of sports trucks, OB trucks, have EVS machines as slow-mo controllers.
Okay.
So really just having an extra box attached to that, you had something that would give you a stream, an open-ended stream. So, and then unfortunately Final Cut Pro 10 could read the EVS streams, but with no timecode. So, but when you come to edit sports, timecode is pretty essential.
It's kind of important. Yeah, there is something odd about particularly the early versions of Final Cut 10 where Final Cut 7 was definitely able to see timecode in things that Final Cut 10 was not able to see timecode in. It would import them okay, but when you brought them in, they all started at 0. I can't remember the details of that. That still happens now with some of the some of the camera formats don't actually have timecode built into the media file itself. The timecode is kind of sitting in a sidecar file, which I don't really understand. And when you bring that into Premiere, it kind of sorts itself out, gives you the proper timecode and whatever. But you bring that into 10, and everything is just back to 0.
Yeah. Which for some uses it might be fine, but not if you're doing sports where you need to. Normally with sport, you have somebody who sits there and logs, whether it's on a machine. I mean, we use a FileMaker Pro database for a lot of stuff that gets shared across suites.
Yep.
It's all referenced by timecode.
Yeah.
And you've got to have timecode to be able to go to stuff. You haven't got time to spool and find it.
So timecode's not going anywhere. It's going to be here to stay.
But certainly for what I want to do, I think if you're shooting with a DSLR and going out and doing stuff that's not dependent on something actually happening and referencing that, you probably don't need timecode. But certainly for the broadcast industry, it's pretty essential. So I have a question for you.
Okay, good one.
Means I can eat something while you're answering.
Yeah, that is the challenge with this concept, isn't it? the primary guest gets to not eat.
What did you think of Randy Ubillos last night on stage at the Super Meet?
I didn't actually go in and watch it.
Yeah, we were working on the
All right, so now I've got to tell you what he said. So it means that
we saw him at the LAFCPUG meeting, which was a month ago, just over a month ago, where he was talking about his own personal sort of video projects and how much he likes about them. So we can speak to that if you want.
I mean, that was interesting because he explained kind of how he uses the templates in iMovie, and it suddenly makes sense as the content analysis that's in iMovie and by extension moved into Final Cut 10 on the auto analysis is really there to derive the types of metadata that the trailers feature needs. It's like, give me a 2-shot. Well, of course, one of the things that you get with content auto analysis is the type of shot: close-up, medium, 2-shot, wide shot. So it kind of connected for me that Randy was really making iMovie for consumers who wanted to make home videos and make it in a way that it got done.
Yeah.
You talked about doing it on the plane on the way home, whereas I have a side trip we did from an NAB 2007, 2008, something like that, up to Zion National Park that I'm still waiting better.
Because I guess the idea is that
it's never been today's most important job.
Yeah.
Whereas if an hour or two at NAB, I probably would have just dragged into a template, a trailer of the trip to Zion National Park, which would have encapsulated the most majority of it, probably as much as any of my friends or family would ever want to watch.
Yeah. I think at the end of his talk at LAFCPUG, he had this slide up where he had 10 pieces of advice.
It was the same. I'm pretty sure it was the same presentation, but very good.
And some of it was sort of, things like keep it short, about 3 minutes, make sure the shots are quick. And I think he probably got frustrated in giving that advice to people and nobody listening to it. So he created these trailers which enforces Randy's one true way of having the short shots and it's only going to make a 3-minute trailer. And it's sort of, I'll show you guys.
When you come to do your trailer, it's going to have to start off back in 2007. Yes. Or the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
Go back. Go back and do the 10-year anniversary one.
Yeah, it would be tough. It would be tough. But yeah, so that sort of stuff, his personal attitude comes through in the product that he is the designer for, which shouldn't come as a surprise, but but it was a little. I was shocked at how closely the trailers feature of Final Cut 10 of iMovie 11 tracks to Randy's attitude from the experience that he's got from all of his travels around many travels around the world. So that's kind of interesting.
But it's good that again, he, albeit his own personal vocation, is the right word, isn't it?
Yes.
Projects have driven it, but he is at the coalface like that. So he's coming up with the answer to his. He comes back with footage that has stayed there doing nothing. How can I use this footage quickly and show it to everybody who might be interested? So it's interesting that the iMovie templates have come as a result of that. And
so, in thinking about that, he is facing the same kind of a problem that other consumers would have, people who go on holidays or attend events or whatever, and they're shooting their own stuff. So that sort of experience doesn't really play well into the professional market. But given the way the iMovie feature comes out of a professional mind, it makes me think that it must be terribly important to Apple to have their finger in what the professionals are doing right now.
Yeah.
Because, unlike what you read on the internet, I don't believe they're sitting in this little glass bubble completely absorbed in themselves and not listening or looking at what's going on in the outside world.
Yeah. Well, we know that's not true because we're not allowed to talk about something that happened on Friday. But
see, I wasn't a part of that, so I don't know
really?
what. No.
You went, you're in B, yeah. Well, everybody went off to somewhere that we're not allowed to mention, and talked about stuff that we're not allowed to talk.
I think we went to the Apple campus.
Okay,
it was on the agenda, that everyone has been able to see. And the reason was they were showing things that were not yet in public. There was no preview of the app, but there were examples of usage of Final Cut 10 that they weren't showing yet.
Okay.
So, but Randy went on to do an interview with Alex. What was that like?
It was good. He started right off at the front, saying about the first version of Premiere, and then we're getting closer and closer to what we all wanted to hear.
And then we ran out of time.
It did. Well, there was a bit of that. So we went through the key grip, everything like that, and then the Final Cut Pro 7, and then the question about 10 came up. And two things I think I tweeted that I found interesting that he said was, one, he imagined the launch to have been slightly different than what actually happened. He said his idea was to give away a copy of Final Cut Pro 7 with 10.
That would have been a very smart idea.
That is an immensely smart idea. And I think, we've all said it before, the problem with the launch, they just cut 7 off. If they'd have said, like the transition, the PowerPC to Intel, from 9 till 10, they all said, Steve Jobs stood up and said, here's where we are, here's where we're going, we want you to go over, but we're going to support both for 2 years. Well, the Intel PowerPC was 2 years, something like that?
Yeah, something like that. But definitely the transition to Mac OS X, I think, was even longer because we had this period where we even had the classic environment where we could run our old OS 9 apps on OS X when that became a thing.
Yeah. So,
and ironically, in all of those, there were ways of moving back and forwards.
Yeah.
So you could you could run OS 9 in a classic environment inside OS X. You could emulate most PowerPC apps on an Intel machine for a while. But when we came to Final Cut 7 to 10, there was absolutely no way of moving forward. It was very
un-Apple.
Yeah. I think it was probably just simply because of the time pressures that Final Cut 10 was developed under.
I think if they'd done the overlap, if they said 2 years, we'll support 7, you're going to get no more new features, no more new features for 7, but we'll support 7 for 2 years. Then
until we make it feature compatible.
Yeah, then that's it. But here's 10. We want you to go here, but we understand with broadcasters that you can't just flick a switch overnight and go here. I mean, imagine if you said with Photoshop to all the graphic designers out there, here's a new Photoshop, doesn't work with the old one.
Yes, the files won't open.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know,
Adobe did that with InDesign.
I think a lot of the problems with the birth of 10 came from that decision of chopping 7 off, and then they reeled it back in and said, okay, no, we have got some licenses for 7, because for about 2 months, if you had a boxed copy of 7, it was like gold, wasn't it? People outside with, you know, tucked under their jackets, you know, I've got a copy of 7 here, you know.
Little whispers that certain value-added resellers had stock of it.
They've got a stock of 30 or whatever, so yes, yeah.
Yeah, that was a strange time. It was a very, very strange time.
And I think probably only about now, really, because we're now at just after the 4th year and you know, birthday of 10. I think we're just probably now just got back to possibly where we were before that. And I think there has been a good recovery, but the industry's changed as well. So, you know, we haven't recovered to where we were. I think we've advanced that.
So, do you think then that this is a question for both of you, I suppose. Do you think that the way that Final Cut 10 was launched affected the perception of the product, even though the product is what it is, regardless of how the launch happens? It's the same product, right?
Yeah, certainly in the market that identifies themselves as pros.
Right.
The market that was the foundation of well, it was the market the Media Composer went after. It was the market that largely you've worked in most of your life, your career. But it's not a market that is the growth market. It stayed relatively static in size, or smaller than it was 20 years ago. When around it has grown up this entire enormous market. I was surprised to read in John Buck's Timelines too, that when Apple first released Final Cut Pro 1, that Andrew Vaughan, the then product manager, said, we expect to sell 20 to 25,000 copies in the next 2 years. Now when they sold 120,000 copies in that period, it kind of made them sit up and say, what the heck is going on here? Because we're making something for a market, and more people are buying it than a market exists.
So it really means that there was this, there was an original market that was fairly small, and then there was this additional market that was shaken out by the lower price points, I guess, of Final Cut 1. But how much bigger was that additional market?
Well, enormous. I mean, the fact that we now have announced it in NAB 2013, I think, they announced that Final Cut Pro 10 had reached 1 million seat sales.
That's, yeah, okay.
That number has obviously increased since then. If there was 1 million sold in the first 2.5 years, there's got to be, you know, more than that. And that's much bigger than the entire market for editors and production that exists in the world officially. So there's a lot of production being done, a lot of editing being done in markets that are not even close to those traditional markets.
But also the other thing that I found interesting in the last 5 minutes of his chat, which was the most interesting to me, was after 10 was launched and all the you know, people started writing and saying it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that, Apple have made a huge mistake. Steve Jobs phoned Randy up and said, do you believe in it? And he said, I do. And Steve Jobs said, well, in that case, so do I.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I've ever heard that. Now, I've heard a lot of bits around the outside, but that's the first time I've heard the direct what happened post-launch with Steve Jobs and 10. So, and then suddenly the whole thing came to, we're off doing his personal, it was about, you know, 10 seconds after that, right, we're off to do his, so I think we just got right up to date and that was it. You know, go no further.
I think it's also interesting that, because that point in time was quite late in Steve Jobs' life. I mean, he was, I think, at that point within a couple of months of dying. And the fact that he still cared about Final Cut 10 was indicative, I think, of how important Final Cut 10 is. Well, not Final Cut 10 specifically, but how having video editing creativity tools on their platform is important to Apple. I think it's part of their DNA.
Yeah.
I feel much more comfortable that Apple will stay with supporting an NLE of professional quality on their platform than I am that Apple will still have a professional NLE for sale in 5 years' time.
There's a scary thought.
Not a very large portion. I mean, video video products in total are 10% of net consolidated net revenue and dropping.
Yeah.
As the prices drop down, the company is, a server, a player, lots of good things, storage company, but editing software is not a crucial part of Apple's livelihood. And it's not a crucial part of Apple's livelihood either. So I just don't think that there's a threat that Apple is going to drop an NLE. I think that they made the change for very good reasons. It was time to reinvent an NLE. Apple were the only company that could do that because, well, everyone else is just not sufficiently comfortable in their own skin or that they can afford to.
Okay. Well, let me ask you the question then, in that case, it means I can eat a bit more food, that Apple took this huge step in redesigning Final Cut. And from my point of view, I think it was a very brave one, but it was the correct one. The more I work with it, the more I find out about it, I am 100% sure that it's the way things are going. Do you think in the future Avid and Adobe will have to do exactly the same? Because, just to say, I look at Premiere now, and it's like, it's track fright. You just look at all that stuff and you just go, it's tracks. What if I want to move this or whatever? And also, I had a good conversation with Jan Kovac, the editor of Focus, and he said something that I hadn't really thought of before, which was all those icons, like the little microphone button in the track, your brain has to process that to look at the GUI. Right. You're obviously not thinking about it, but it's taking some capacity that you're seeing that and having to look at it. Yeah. So Apple, in simplifying the GUI and getting stuff that you don't need out of the way, means you can concentrate on the timeline. Yeah. So that's why now when I open up Premiere, it's just a lot of stuff in front of you. So do you think any NLE manufacturer is going to have to follow Apple and do maybe not radical, but a rethink?
Logically, they should.
But I think possibly the answer is no.
Yeah, I think probably the answer is no. Media Composer, Avid cannot change the interface. I mean, they changed that. Was it the lift icon, the hamburger icon?
Right.
Wasn't it? They changed some icons and caught enormous flack over just changing some icons because people have got these years of recognising this particular icon means this thing, and so
now they've got to stop and think about it. So it takes them out of their zone.
I don't think Avid can change Media Composer, and I don't think they should change Media Composer. The type of editor that's working in Media Composer is further along in their career than most,
okay.
and therefore probably somewhat set in their ways.
But to be fair, I'm not a young person just starting out in editing. But I love Final Cut Pro 10, and I made that change.
I think what's interesting is that when you look at the history of Apple's NLE software, pretty much all of it until recent times has been bought in. So Final Cut was Key Grip, which was Macromedia's app, and the original iMovie was bought in. It was only with iMovie 09 that was Randy's little project to deal with his holiday videos, that became the new iMovie.
The film strip, the first film strip. Yeah.
And of course,
Skimmer and
Adobe and Avid will probably be inspired by.
Probably.
Hover Scrub is an example of all sort of dancing around.
Right.
But no audio though.
Well, I mean, you have to make it different enough that you have second infringement. And it's possible it was completely independently invented in a parallel timeline, but that's not the easiest, that's not Occam's explanation. The simplest explanation is usually the right one.
I think that...
I do see Adobe making some moves towards that. They can do moving into doing smart collection, so that they're starting to be inspired by some of the things that are in Final Cut 10. But I think the Premiere Pro is having its success at the moment simply because it is a logical successor for Final Cut 7 for those people who don't want to relearn new paradigms. They don't want to have that disruptive shrift.
But what happens when, I was speaking to somebody last night, they said, I used to do a job on Final Cut Pro 7, it took me 4 days. Now on Final Cut Pro 10, it takes me a day and a half. Now, that's money. And money is what drives the industry. So if you've got a producer who says, well, hang on, you're doing it on Premiere or 7 and it's taking you 4 days and you're doing it on 10, I have to pay a day and a half for you, but 4 days, it's a complete no-brainer. They're just going to go, do you not think there'll come a time where people will see how quick 10 is, and there'll be a commercial advantage with it because people will get stuff done.
Absolutely.
And then that will force the change of Adobe will have to go, well, we need to do something to get up to that speed.
But at that point, they lose their unique selling proposition, and now they're just making a Final Cut Pro 10 clone and admitting defeat that they've done the wrong thing. I mean, I think you're absolutely completely right. I think once it's more widely known that Final Cut Pro 10 does help people cut faster and get to a result much faster, more fluid, it's more fun, all of these reasons, and it's what I've been saying, is that I think Premiere Pro is doing very well at the moment, simply because those people who like the paradigms that they were comfortable with to move into what is a modern professional NLE now, as it always been, but it is now, that has all of the advantages of working with all the media in non-tape workflows, has all of those advantages, and it's still a traditional NLE. Whatever that's a migration issue, that's good for them, and that's why they're doing well right now, and I expect will continue to do well for the next couple of years. But once the message gets out that Final Cut 10 is faster, there is no way that any thinking producer is going to say, oh, I'd rather you use the slower one because you know it better. So it is going to be a serious disadvantage for individual editors who have chosen a particular platform to be disadvantaged. We have a friend who is so uncomfortable with Final Cut 10 that he cut his career short and retired early instead. But he still spends 2 or 3 or 4 days or a week transcoding material before he can start editing. And I find it so frustrating because Final Cut 10 is absolutely perfect for the sort of business that he's running, the sort of business that he's had, the way he works, and yet because it requires relearning, people don't want to make that transition. And those people who do and get in the mindset of Final Cut 10, always, I've yet to find anyone that says I am slower in Final Cut 10 than I am in anything else.
Why is that though? What is the secret sauce that is creating that possibility?
Well, I mean, for me, it's keyword ranges and the magnetic timeline and everything that goes with that. But
skimming.
Yeah.
And skimming,
But going even further than that, you can always run a scrubber across a clip in the canvas.
True.
But not on this film strip.
Oh. You had to double click it to get into the canvas.
That's true.
I can skim across anything in the browser.
Yeah. And of course, the other thing is that depending on your media in Final Cut 7, because it was based on QuickTime, it wasn't very performant. So that was all based on your CPU, whereas the AV Foundation media playback that they've got for Final Cut 10 loves big files, loves complicated codecs where everything has to be unencoded between.
When Final Cut Pro 10 came out, well, maybe a year after it came out, I compared it to a Formula One racing car.
Okay.
Or an Indy car or whatever, and saying that it can go very fast, or it will go very fast, but at the moment it's got a tyre missing. It can't turn left. Right. They're yet to bolt something on. But what they did is they invented. They had the chassis.
Right.
They had the chassis to be able to go very fast. And what they've done in the 4 years is they've built the thing up so now it can actually go really fast. Yes, you can come off at a corner if you don't do something or whatever. Yes, there are gotchas, but compared to the other NLEs, what the other NLEs have done is they can like put a turbocharger on there something, or they
Updated the gearbox.
yes, exactly right. They've taken their old one and tried to make it go faster, and there's going to come a point where there's a limit, and it won't, either through GUI design or engineering wise, and I just think what we've got with 10 is we've got, you know, after 4 years we've got a very good NLE, but in some ways the next 4 years are going to be very, very interesting. Whereas the next 4 years of Premiere are just going to be more bits added, or let's make a go a bit faster. I mean, I think it's fairly obvious that I think I said publicly online, probably compared to Avid and Premiere, probably Final Cut Pro 10's probably got the more basic color correction tools of the three, without putting a third party thing. They must know that. They must know that. So, you know, I would expect somewhere along the line,
I should buy Color Finale.
somewhere along the line, they will bring out an update to the inspector that pops up with curves and everything. And you know what Apple do? They don't do it, you know, by anything by half. It will be the best color correction that you could do. And I think the same with the audio in 10. The audio in 10 is, for me, the thing that slows it down.
Okay.
I present a counter position in that Adobe have speed grade in their toolset, part of Creative Cloud, you get it for nothing. But they have moved some of the speed grade engine Lumetri engine into Premiere Pro, so that you can apply looks and basic correction in Premiere Pro without having to leave and go into the full engine. There's a reason, I think, why we didn't get an update to color in Final Cut in a Final Cut 10 suite. And that's because most people are not really color grading, and those people that do really want color grading, it's hard to compete with a very, very, very good tool that is free for all intents and purposes, that's dedicated to that with, you know, decent finishing editorial tools.
Yeah.
I don't think Apple are going to do a big color upgrade. I think what they will do is make it easy to apply looks, make it easy to get a good basic result quickly that will suit 80% of the user base, and let third parties fill in the opportunities for those people who want something more, like Color Finale, or like going to Resolve, or Magic Red Giant have Magic Bullet.
Yes.
So there are a lot of third-party alternatives, and that seems to be the way, the philosophy that's underpinning Final Cut 10. Not that we know for sure, because nobody talks about these things.
Didn't they tell you at Cupertino yesterday?
Well, if they did, we can't tell you.
Okay.
So there's that. So they're making a very common and professional editing tool that covers most people's needs most of the time. And for those people who need something more, I think the only area where I've sensed any uncertainty about their current tool set would be in the audio area. And I'd certainly like to see a better audio mixer in Final Cut 10.
And the glib answer of send it out to Logic Pro is not good enough?
Well,
is that too
again,
audio?
Logic requires the editor to learn a whole other interface, to learn a whole other skill set.
And also you've got to have picture lock, more or less.
Right.
Because you can trying to go back and then fiddle with it and go back, and you know, it's not going to work. And especially in the area that I'm in, there's just no time to do that. And also, you know what it's like. You cut something, you say to the director, are you happy with it? Yes. You know you're really, really happy with it? Yes. It's not going to change? No. Put it into Logic. Oh, I need to change that. You know, that's the nature of the business. And I think that with third-party apps or going outside round tripping, that's fine if you're doing something like a feature film or something where there comes a point where there's a boundary and you've got the time to say, that's it. Off it goes.
Based on my experience, feature films don't lock.
No, 18 different handovers on Focus, and a similar number on Gone Girl. So every one of those needs a new change list generated to change from the version 16 to version 17. So the picture lock is a misnomer.
But in the area I'm in, we haven't got the time or the manpower to be able to go, oh, let's put it into Logic, or let's put it into Resolve, or something like that. Just haven't got that time. Haven't got the time to do anything. You know, it's really. I mean, I'll give you an example. I should really put it on YouTube or something like that. I did another cycling job 2 or 3 weeks ago. The director said, oh, I want this to show this kind of what happened yesterday with the passage of time, and so it ended up being a kind of like a multi-layer. On the bottom was a moving background. It was generated. We've got a graphics department, so you know, basically I'm just doing the compositing. On the bottom was a graphic layer. Then on top of that, I was using compound clips with a matte on top in the compound clip. So the thing wiped on and then wiped off, but it was dependent on how long the clip was. So they made me a 5-second matte with the animation on and off, and then I just nibbled away to make it shorter or longer. Because I found out that the hold, you say, why don't you retime? Yeah, so you say, why don't you just put a hold in it and then stretch it to length? It holds a field and not a frame. Yes. Why does it look blurry? Oh. So there really needs to be in Final Cut Pro 10 an option to, when you do a hold, that it holds the frame as opposed to the field.
I haven't done any interlaced work for the longest time.
Well, the whole of broadcast television is interlaced.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
But the whole of broadcast television is still a niche market, and is no more than 50 at best, being super generous, 50,000 units worldwide, and we're talking well over 1 million Final Cut.
Yeah.
So this is why I think what they did is they invented a new NLE for a new era and a new type of work.
Yeah.
And it works equally well because it is faster for the more traditional workflows, but it still requires a different way of thinking.
Yeah, but I agree with you with the numbers, but you know, in that case, why was such a big thing made out of focus? Because if I'm in a niche of 50,000, focus is in a niche of 2.
That's marketing. Marketing value. And it is marketing value. It's the same reason that SDI was ever put into support, was ever added. You know, there are certain things, there is a reason why they never fixed the edit to tape functionality in Final Cut 1 through 7. I mean, you could not rely on that edit to tape function to be frame accurate every time.
Yeah.
And if you did, then you were directed to other alternatives. Third-party tools came with the hardware that would do frame accurate insert editing. So I see this as being a continuous philosophy. I also see Adobe progressively moving tools out of their other apps into the NLE so that people don't have to go out. So the basic titling tools from After Effects have come into Premiere Pro. The basic masking tools have come into Premiere Pro. The things that editors need, they need inside the editing tool, not the round tripping, making your case for no round tripping.
Yeah.
Right.
But you can't burden the app with stuff that nobody needs, that relatively few people need, because it will get in the way of people who don't need it. Now, if you in 10, they've managed to do that with a very elegant manner, so that you have hidden complexity.
Yeah. Progressive disclosure.
Yes.
That's a better term. Yeah.
It sounds like a film that Michael Douglas was in or something, doesn't it? Progressive disclosure.
Interesting thing is that I realised is when Final Cut 10 was released, it was talked about as being the platform for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Well, we're now 40% of the way through that. And Final Cut Classic lasted for 12 years. From the time it was launched to the time it was end of life.
So a third of the way through Final Cut Pro 7's life.
Yes, we're
10's
equivalent to the
life,
third
yes.
of the way through
Yes.
Final Cut Pro 7's life.
Which means the clock is ticking.
So.
Are we prepared to embrace the change again in...
But that's interesting. Do you say, well, I don't think you can really compare them, but where was Final Cut Pro 7 in its lifetime in relation to...
No, that's a great question. We've
Where-
talked about this before, haven't we?
2003, so that would have been...
I haven't got the answer. That's why I'm looking at. That's why I'm looking at you.
I'd have to go and look it up. The 2003 would have been around Final Cut.
2003 Final Cut Pro 3. Then they would have had the Kona card, broadcast 10-bit, but no ProRes. ProRes wasn't around because when I first started doing broadcast stuff, it had to be uncompressed, and that's why you had to have a big RAID sitting next to you, heating the room up.
Or a Cinewave card.
And then ProRes came along. So
yeah, 4 years into the original Final Cut, we possibly would have been at Final Cut 3, maybe.
So is it fair to say that in its life, Final Cut Pro 10 has come a long way, it has had much more development in the time period in relation to the other NL?
We reached our Cold Mountain moment before the original Cold Mountain moment. How about that?
I think Apple would certainly like you to make that point repeatedly, that Final Cut 10 has had a much more rapid development phase than Final Cut 10.
18 updates in 4, is it 17 or 18? updates in 4 years.
But yeah, there is a big difference in the way, in the era of the original Final Cut, things had to come in boxes and things had to be distributed through the channel and things had to be on shiny discs. And so being able to do updates was a very laborious process. Whereas Final Cut 10 has only ever and will only ever be available through the Mac App Store. So the process of being able to do updates is awesome. Now, the one thing that they don't have in the Mac App Store is any mechanism to be able to charge for an upgrade. Nor is there really a mechanism to be able to release a next version.
Right.
Because even the trial, it's a completely different app. It's a different app ID bundle.
Oh, well, I didn't realise that. It's not there. Do you have to download the new one again?
Yes.
And it replaces the old one?
Yes.
Right, so it's a completely, the free version is a completely different app.
The 30-day trial is completely different. Well, code-wise, it's the same app, but it's a different app bundle. It's got different items in the, it's a free app in the App Store.
I was terribly amused around the time of 10.09 when people were speculating what's the next version going to be and is it going to be a paid upgrade or are we going to have to pay full price again? And I'm just sniggering to myself going, you guys don't know.
Just the final question that I've been asking everybody is, what do you think is going to be the biggest change in the going forward in the rest of your career?
Retirement.
Future technology.
All right, okay.
Good answer, though.
Future technology change.
That's a hard question.
It is a hard question because I think we've gone through the real big ones. I think we've gone through. So I can walk around here with my computer bag with something that can edit. I can carry around terabytes of footage in my bag. I can do it on 4K now, should I want to. Do I want to edit on an iPad? Do I? No, I probably don't. Next big technology change, I think it's probably going to possibly come when internet speeds get very quick and you'll be able to push data down and pull data back without having to worry about uploading or downloading. So instead of waiting for something to upload, it'll be so fast you'll get stuff down. So you could, I know there are companies out there who say you can remotely edit or whatever at the moment, but say something like a news company being able to edit, pull rushes from the library and be able to send something back instantly, I think will be big. Having a centralized thing, not storing stuff in the cloud or anything like that, but just having a fast enough pipe. So almost like let's say it's another way. If your internet connection was fast as Thunderbolt, you'd plug in and then you could plug into a remote server or 2 remote servers or something like that. I think when you get internet speeds that are that quick, that will change stuff. But I mean, I don't think that's there at the moment, however people say it is, because I go out on jobs and we have trouble uploading to YouTube sometimes. And I don't want all my stuff in the cloud, really. I just want it on fast on a disk to be able to use. Okay, cut with proxies or something like that, maybe fine. But it seems to me I'm getting more footage. I'm getting bigger drives, not less.
And so having enormous storage space in the cloud is no good if the pipe to get it there is teeny tiny.
Completely, it's got to go hand in hand. Having that space but almost in technology if the internet comes so quick that it doesn't really matter where you are, or you could just plug in, and then because I'm pretty sure once we've all gone 4K, we'll all go off to NAB and it'll be 8K, because manufacturers have to keep selling stuff, and they'll keep going. They'll keep going and saying you need this, you need this, you need this, and probably in the end you don't. So, possibly internet speeds is the next one.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for lunch.
Don't forget Industrial Revolution and FCP.co.